The 1980s were a fever dream of Saturday morning television. Studios gambled on the idea that anything popular, sitcoms, toys, even puzzles, could be turned into a cartoon. Some thrived, others flopped, and many slipped through history's cracks. What happens when beloved characters are reimagined in animated form? Today, we count down 19 forgotten cartoon spin-offs the world has nearly erased. The Fonz and the Happy Days Gang, 1980. At the height of Happy Days, Arthur Fonzarelli was television's definition of cool. Kids imitated his catchphrases, adults admired his swagger, and Fonzie's thumbs up became an American icon. So when Hanna-Barbera adapted the hit sitcom into animation, expectations were high. But what emerged in 1980 shocked even the most loyal fans, a time-traveling cartoon called The Fonz and the Happy Days Gang. Instead of the familiar jukeboxes of Milwaukee, the animated series transported Fonzie, Richie, and Ralph into wild adventures across history. Joined by a futuristic girl named Cupcake and a talking dog called Mr. Cool, the gang zoomed through eras trying to correct bizarre time paradoxes. The result was less about leather jackets and more about outlandish sci-fi hijinks. Henry Winkler, Ron Howard, and Donnie Most reprised their roles, lending legitimacy to the project, but even their voices couldn't mask the strangeness of the premise. Parents who grew up loving Fonzie's real-world coolness were bewildered to see him flying spaceships and chatting with his canine sidekick. Critics wondered aloud. Had the producers lost sight of what made Happy Days special in the first place? The show limped through 2 seasons, but it has since become a cultural curiosity. It stands as proof that even the most beloved characters can be twisted into unrecognizable shapes when networks chase trends instead of storytelling. In the end, the Fonzie who once ruled the small screen with a snap of his fingers found himself stranded in the shadows of Saturday morning. Rubik, the Amazing Cube, 1983. Few toys embodied the 1980s more than the Rubik's Cube. Its colorful, frustrating puzzles consumed classrooms, family rooms, and after-school hangouts. So when CBS executives asked, why not make it a cartoon? The result was Rubik, the Amazing Cube, an animated oddity that defied logic almost as much as the toy itself. In this short-lived series, a group of Hispanic siblings discovered Rubik, a magical cube with a face, voice, and extraordinary powers. When solved, Rubik sprang to life, glowing and floating to help the kids out of jams. Sometimes he fought off bumbling crooks, other times he aided schoolyard dilemmas. To give the show extra sparkle, the opening theme was performed by Menudo. Yes, the Latin boy band that would later launch Ricky Martin's career. The show felt like a 30-minute toy commercial dressed up as children's programming. Parents rolled their eyes, while kids were torn between delight at the cube's magic and confusion about why their own toy at home stubbornly refused to sprout a face and talk. Critics dismissed it as shameless product placement, one more attempt to cash in on the toy craze. It ran for just 1 season before disappearing, but its legacy endures as a symbol of the 1980s unrestrained commercial imagination. Those who grew up watching can still hum the theme song, proof that even the strangest ideas can carve out a nostalgic niche. In hindsight, Rubik, the Amazing Cube, is remembered less for its quality and more as an artifact of the era's unfiltered creativity. Laverne and Shirley in the Army, 1981. Riding on the coattails of Fonzie's animated adventures, Hanna-Barbera decided to give sitcom duo Laverne DeFazio and Shirley Feeney their own cartoon spin-off. But rather than Milwaukee apartments and factory antics, Laverne and Shirley in the Army shipped the duo straight into basic training. Suddenly, the quick-witted roommates were private recruits serving under an overbearing drill sergeant, who happened to be a talking pig named Squealy. Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams initially returned to voice their characters, giving fans a taste of authenticity. But behind the scenes, trouble brewed. Williams departed after the first season, and her replacement's voice lacked the chemistry that had made the live-action series sparkle. Without that bond, the cartoon fell flat, relying on slapstick humor, pratfalls, and endless misunderstandings rather than sharp dialogue. Audiences weren't impressed. Kids didn't understand the military setting, while parents longed for the charm of the original sitcom. Ratings lagged, and despite Hanna-Barbera's attempts to inject life into the premise, the series sputtered out after 2 forgettable seasons. Today, it's remembered as one of television's strangest detours. 2 beloved sitcom stars reduced to cartoon recruits battling comical chaos under a porcine commander. It was proof that not every concept could survive the leap from prime time to Saturday morning. Mork and Mindy, Laverne and Shirley, Charlotte Fonz Hour, 1982. By 1982, networks were desperate to salvage these struggling spin-offs. Their solution? Merge them into a single programming block, the Mork and Mindy, Laverne and Shirley, Charlotte Fonz Hour. It was television's equivalent of stitching together leftover scraps and hoping the quilt would hold. The hour-long block featured 3 cartoons back-to-back, rebranded as one Super Show. Mork and Mindy showcased Robin Williams and Pam Dauber reprising their roles, though the script stripped away the improvisational energy that had made Mork iconic. Gone were the clever cultural critiques. In their place were gadget-driven plots and juvenile slapstick. Meanwhile, Laverne and Shirley slogged through army gags, and Fonzie stumbled through more time travel mishaps. The combination was a ratings disaster. Robin Williams's animated Mork lacked the manic brilliance he brought to live action, leaving fans disappointed. Critics savaged the block, calling it one of Hanna-Barbera's most desperate experiments. Kids tuned out, confused by the mismatched tones and thin writing. Within a year, the package was gone, buried alongside its component shows. And yet, this ill-fated Cartoon Hour offers a fascinating snapshot of the era. It reveals how studios clung to fading cultural icons, repackaging them for children who barely knew the originals. In hindsight, the show was less a triumph of creativity than a cautionary tale about oversaturation. The Dukes, 1983. By the early 1980s, the Dukes of Hazzard had become a cultural juggernaut, with its fast cars, small-town charm, and over-the-top stunts. CBS saw dollar signs and, like many other studios, believed the formula could be repackaged into a Saturday morning cartoon. Thus came The Dukes, an animated series that stripped away the live-action grit and replaced it with family-friendly antics. The cartoon followed cousins Bo, Luke, and Daisy Duke, along with Uncle Jesse, as they traveled around the world in the General Lee, competing in international races. Their nemeses, Boss Hogg and Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane, followed close behind, scheming to sabotage them at every turn. On paper, it was part racing adventure, part slapstick comedy. But behind the scenes, the show mirrored drama from the live-action series. At the time, John Schneider, Bo, and Tom Wopat, Luke, were in a contract dispute, so the early episodes replaced them with Coy and Vance Duke, voiced by different actors. Ratings dipped, confusion set in, and fans grumbled. When Schneider and Wopat returned, the cartoon corrected course, but the damage was done. Critics dismissed the animation as cheap and the plots as formulaic. Yet for young fans, the bright colors, wacky races, and familiar car chases held a certain charm. After 2 seasons, however, the novelty wore off, and the show was quietly canceled. Today, The Dukes survives mostly as a quirky footnote, a reminder of how even the General Lee couldn't escape the cartoon spin-off craze. What was once a Southern fried primetime phenomenon ended up reduced to animated slapstick, proving that some stories simply lose their horsepower when stripped of their original context. Gilligan's Planet, 1982. Few sitcoms were as enduring or as ridiculous as Gilligan's Island. 17 years after the castaways first washed ashore, Hanna-Barbera decided to take them even further, into space. Gilligan's Planet reimagined the bumbling crew marooned not on a deserted island, but on a faraway planet after blasting off in a spaceship built by the professor. The premise was absurd, yet oddly fitting for the cartoon era. Once again, Gilligan stumbled into trouble, Skipper shouted in exasperation, and the castaways dreamed of rescue. But instead of coconuts and huts, their world was filled with alien creatures and intergalactic slapstick. Almost the entire original cast, including Bob Denver, returned to voice their characters, lending authenticity to the madness. Critics had mixed reactions. Some praised the nostalgia, while others saw it as a desperate attempt to wring more life from a decades-old idea. Children who never knew the original show accepted it as a goofy sci-fi romp, while parents who remembered the island days were baffled by the cosmic twist. The series lasted a single season before cancellation. Today, it is often cited as one of the strangest spin-offs in television history, a surreal fusion of classic sitcom and space-age fantasy. It captures the 1980s tendency to push concepts to extremes, even if it meant stranding Gilligan light years from the lagoon that made him famous. Mr. T, 1983. In the early 1980s, Mr. T was everywhere. His mohawk, gold chains, and booming voice made him one of the most recognizable personalities in America. After Rocky III and the A-Team, NBC believed his persona could carry a cartoon. Thus, Mr. T was born, a Saturday morning series where the tough but kind fighter trained a team of teenage gymnasts who solved mysteries. Each episode followed a Scooby-Doo-like formula. The team traveled to a new town, encountered a problem, and unraveled a mystery, all while Mr. T offered tough love wisdom. At the end of each show, a live-action Mr. T appeared on screen, delivering a moral lesson like, "Stay in school," or "Don't give up." It was part action, part public service announcement. Though mocked by critics for its formulaic plots, the show resonated with kids. Mr. T's commanding presence lent an authenticity that made the cartoon feel larger than life. He wasn't just a cartoon hero, he was a real figure teaching lessons about discipline, teamwork, and resilience. Mr. T ran for 3 seasons, a rare success among celebrity-driven cartoons of the era. While many spin-offs are forgotten curiosities, this one left a cultural mark, remembered for its strange blend of action, gymnastics, and life advice. Today, it stands as a reminder of Mr. T's unique hold on 1980s pop culture. New Kids on the Block, 1989. By the end of the decade, boy bands had found their animated niche. Riding the wave of hysteria surrounding the group, ABC launched New Kids on the Block, an animated series where Jordan, Joey, Donnie, Danny, and Jonathan balanced pop stardom with wacky adventures. Unlike other celebrity cartoons, this one leaned heavily on the group's real-world fame. Live-action footage of the band opened each episode, leading into animated tales filled with hijinks, musical numbers, and screaming fans. The plots were thin, misunderstandings with fans, battles with rival managers, or cartoonish villains trying to steal the spotlight, but the energy mirrored the mania of their concerts. The group did not voice their own characters, reportedly due to scheduling conflicts, which disappointed many fans. Still, their album music appeared throughout, ensuring the cartoon doubled as a marketing tool for albums and merchandise. Reception was mixed. Die-hard fans tuned in religiously, while critics dismissed it as fluff. The show lasted 1 season before fading, but it remains a time capsule of the era's boy band obsession. In hindsight, New Kids on the Block wasn't groundbreaking storytelling. It was a cartoon built on fandom itself, proof that by the late 80s, animation had become as much about celebrity branding as creativity. The Gary Coleman Show, 1982. By 1982, Gary Coleman was one of television's brightest young stars, thanks to Different Strokes. NBC, eager to capitalize on his fame, commissioned The Gary Coleman Show, an animated series where Coleman didn't play a kid from Harlem, but a guardian angel named Andy LeBeau. In this strange reimagining, Coleman's character was tasked with helping children solve everyday problems while learning moral lessons along the way. The premise was loosely based on Coleman's TV movie The Kid with the Broken Halo, but Saturday mornings turned it into a morality-driven fantasy. Each episode saw Andy helping children overcome dilemmas ranging from school bullies to self-doubt, all under the supervision of a heavenly boss who sent him back to Earth for missions. Despite Coleman's undeniable star power, the show struggled. Some critics felt it was too preachy, while others argued that the animation quality didn't match his charisma. Still, for kids, the idea of Gary Coleman as a literal angel was comforting. He was the small but mighty protector they recognized from primetime, now guiding them through cartoon-sized problems. The series lasted only one season, but its existence perfectly illustrates the era's fascination with turning celebrities into cartoon role models. Today, it feels like a relic of the time when Coleman's face alone could launch a show. Though quickly forgotten, The Gary Coleman Show is a poignant reminder of the pressures placed on child stars and how networks rushed to build empires around their fleeting popularity. The New Archies, 1987. Archie Andrews and his gang have been reimagined countless times, but in 1987, DIC Entertainment took a bold risk, aging them down into awkward junior high students. The New Archies placed Archie, Betty, Veronica, Jughead, and Reggie in Riverdale Junior High, where they navigated crushes, exams, and misadventures. The animation was slicker than previous Archie series, but the tone felt uneven. Instead of the light-hearted comedy fans expected, the stories veered into after-school special territory, tackling issues like peer pressure, self-esteem, and fitting in. The series also introduced two new characters, Amani and Eugene, making it one of the more diverse Archie adaptations. Despite these attempts at freshness, audiences didn't embrace it. Longtime fans disliked the baby-fied versions of their favorite characters, while kids found it hard to connect with the gang's overly sanitized antics. Critics derided it as a failed attempt to modernize a classic without respecting its charm. Still, the New Archies left behind a curious legacy. Many of its designs and concepts later influenced Archie's Weird Mysteries in the 1990s, proving the franchise's elasticity. Yet the junior high experiment remains largely forgotten, tucked into VHS tapes and fuzzy Saturday morning memories. It reminds us that not all reinventions stick. The essence of Archie was always high school, not middle school. Turbo Teen, 1984. If one show embodies the wild imagination and occasional absurdity of 1980s animation, it's Turbo Teen. The premise was jaw-dropping. Teenager Brett Matthews is exposed to a government experiment gone wrong and gains the ability to transform into a red sports car whenever he gets too hot. With the help of his friends and a loyal dog, he uses his bizarre powers to fight crime. The transformation sequences were both fascinating and unsettling. Animators depicted Brett's body contorting, stretching, and reshaping into metal and wheels in scenes that left some kids awestruck and others genuinely creeped out. While marketed as a blend of Knight Rider and Spider-Man, the show's tone swung wildly from serious action to outright camp. Behind the scenes, the series was rushed into production to capitalize on the popularity of high-tech car shows. Writers struggled to balance its sci-fi elements with teen drama, often leaving plots feeling thin. Yet, despite these flaws, Turbo Teen developed a cult following. Fans were captivated by its sheer audacity and the surreal body horror quality of Brett's transformations. The show only lasted one season, but its reputation has grown with time. Today, it's remembered less as a Saturday morning hit and more as a fascinating relic of creative risk-taking. Turbo Teen asks a question no one knew they wanted answered. What if puberty meant turning into a Pontiac Firebird instead of just getting pimples? Alf, the animated series, 1987. When ALF debuted in 1986, audiences fell in love with the wisecracking alien who crashed into a suburban family's garage. NBC saw an opportunity to expand the franchise into animation, but instead of focusing on Alf's earthly hijinks, the cartoon spun backward, exploring his home planet of Melmac before its destruction. The animated series followed Gordon Shumway as a young alien navigating school, family life, and absurd Melmacian culture. Every detail was exaggerated: bizarre foods, strange customs, and surreal technology. It was a chance for kids to see the world Alf always joked about in the sitcom. Paul Fusco, Alf's puppeteer and voice, reprised his role, ensuring continuity with the live-action version. But here's the twist. Despite Alf's booming popularity, the cartoon never captured the same magic. Critics complained that the humor lacked bite, leaning too heavily on slapstick and goofy world-building rather than the sardonic wit that made Alf special. Viewership was decent at first, but without the familiar Tanner family or Earth-based jokes, many fans drifted away. The series ran for 2 seasons, later spawning a spin-off of its own, A-Elf Tales, which retold fairy tales with Melmac characters. Today, Alf. The animated series survives mostly as a curiosity for hardcore fans, a reminder of how quickly studios tried to cash in on cultural phenomena. For every sharp one-liner on the primetime show, the cartoon gave us a watered-down gag, proof that some stars shine brightest in their original form. The Punky Brewster Cartoon, 1985. Punky Brewster, with her mismatched shoes and boundless optimism, became a household name in the mid-'80s. NBC quickly turned her into a Saturday morning icon with It's Punky Brewster, an animated spin-off that tried to magnify her charm. But instead of sticking to relatable childhood adventures, the cartoon added a bizarre twist, a magical leprechaun-like creature named Glomer. Glomer, voiced with a thick accent, was a fuzzy alien from Schaefer City who granted Punky and her friends wishes. This fantastical addition shifted the show from heartfelt slice of life to outlandish adventures, often involving teleportation, shrinking spells, or other magical mishaps. Soleil Moon Frye voiced Punky herself, giving the cartoon some credibility. Yet critics argued the show missed what made Punky special in the first place: her resilience as a foster child navigating real-world challenges. Instead, it turned her into another cartoon heroine caught up in zany, unrealistic escapades. Despite the criticism, kids enjoyed the whimsy, and the series ran for 2 seasons. Today, however, it feels largely forgotten, overshadowed by the enduring cultural memory of the live-action show. When fans remember Punky, they recall her bright clothes and big heart, not her animated adventures with a pint-sized magical companion. The cartoon's legacy reminds us how networks often sacrificed authenticity for spectacle, losing the soul of a character in the process. The Real Ghostbusters, 1986. After the 1984 blockbuster Ghostbusters conquered theaters, it was inevitable that an animated spin-off would follow. The Real Ghostbusters wasn't just a cartoon, it became one of the most successful Saturday morning shows of the decade. But its history is riddled with twists, creative battles, and forgotten controversies. The title itself came from a legal dispute. Filmation, the company behind He-Man, had its own 1970s show called Ghostbusters and wanted to create its own animated revival. To avoid confusion, the Columbia Pictures cartoon was titled The Real Ghostbusters, emphasizing authenticity. The series expanded the Ghostbusters universe, giving Egon a swirl of blonde hair, Slimer a comedic sidekick role, and New York an endless supply of supernatural threats. While fans adored the expansion, behind the scenes there were conflicts. Consultants worried the show was too scary for kids, leading to watered-down villains and softer storylines in later seasons. Voice casting added more intrigue. Lorenzo Music, who famously voiced Garfield, originally played Peter Venkman. But Bill Murray himself disliked the portrayal, reportedly lobbying for a change. Dave Coulier eventually replaced Music, shifting the tone of Venkman's character. Despite all the turbulence, the Real Ghostbusters ran for 7 seasons, cementing itself as one of the era's longest-lasting spin-offs. Though far from forgotten by hardcore fans, its controversies, compromises, and legacy as a toned-down version of a wild film highlight the strange balancing act of adapting blockbusters into Saturday morning cartoons. The Muppet Babies, a 1984. At the height of Jim Henson's influence, the Muppet Babies emerged as one of the most successful cartoon adaptations of the decade. Inspired by a fantasy sequence in The Muppets Take Manhattan, the series imagined Kermit, Miss Piggy, Fozzie, and the rest of the gang as toddlers living together in a nursery overseen by the gentle voice of Nanny. What set the show apart was its boundless creativity. Episodes frequently slipped into fantasy sequences where the babies reenacted scenes from famous movies, everything from Star Wars to Indiana Jones. Through clever editing and occasional use of live-action film clips, the series became a playground of imagination. Behind the scenes, it wasn't easy. Licensing clips from blockbuster films was expensive and complicated, meaning later seasons had to reduce their use of live-action footage. Still, the heart of the show endured, the idea that playtime could unlock entire universes. The series won multiple Daytime Emmy Awards and ran for 8 seasons, making it one of the longest-running animated spin-offs of the decade. For many who grew up in the 1980s, Muppet Babies was their introduction to storytelling itself, a reminder that imagination had no limits. Though far from forgotten, its legacy has faded compared to the primetime Muppets. Yet, in many ways, it quietly influenced generations of creatives, proving that sometimes the simplest ideas, like giving iconic characters a childhood, can create timeless magic. The Karate Kid, 1989. After the massive success of the Karate Kid films, it seemed only natural that an animated spin-off would emerge. But instead of rehashing Daniel LaRusso's underdog story, the cartoon took a wildly different path. In the Karate Kid animated series, Daniel and Mr. Miyagi traveled the globe in search of a magical shrine, battling villains and mystical forces along the way. Fans of the movies were stunned. Gone were the grounded lessons of discipline, patience, and balance. Instead, episodes featured Daniel facing supernatural foes, cursed relics, and outlandish martial arts stunts straight out of fantasy adventure. Even Mr. Miyagi, the wise mentor played so subtly by Pat Morita in the films, was transformed into a globe-trotting action hero who fought monsters and sorcerers. The show aired on NBC but lasted only 1 season before disappearing. Critics panned it for abandoning the soul of the films in favor of generic adventure tropes. For young kids, however, the martial arts spectacle provided a Saturday morning thrill ride. Today, the Karate Kid cartoon is remembered as a bizarre detour in an otherwise iconic franchise. While Cobra Kai revived the saga decades later by returning to its roots, the animated series stands as proof that not every property benefits from the jump to fantasy-driven storytelling. Sometimes, the real magic lies in staying grounded. Police Academy. The animated series, 1988. The Police Academy films were raunchy comedies filled with slapstick chaos, adult humor, and absurd characters. So when Ruby Spears Productions created Police Academy, the animated series, they faced a challenge. How do you turn an R-rated franchise into kid-friendly entertainment? The answer was to lean entirely on zany antics and over-the-top villains. The cartoon introduced the familiar misfit cops, Mahoney, Jones, Tackleberry, Hightower, but softened their edges. Instead of risque jokes, they faced cartoon criminals like the Claw, a bumbling mastermind with a mechanical hand. The show emphasized teamwork, gadgets, and slapstick, essentially turning the rowdy films into a Looney Tunes-style romp. Remarkably, it worked. The series ran for 2 full seasons and even produced a toy line, proving that studios could sanitize an adult comedy into something marketable for children. But longtime fans of the films were baffled, wondering how the risque humor of the original could survive in such a watered-down format. While forgotten by most audiences today, the Police Academy cartoon represents one of the more surprising spin-off successes of the decade. It shows how flexible the Saturday morning landscape truly was. If you could make cops goofy and villains funny, kids would tune in. Still, it remains a strange experiment, forever overshadowed by the bawdy antics of the movies that spawned it. Teen Wolf, 1986. When Michael J. Fox starred in Teen Wolf, 1985, the comedy about a teenager balancing high school with his werewolf identity became a cult hit. 1 year later, CBS launched Teen Wolf, the animated series, hoping to ride the wave of Fox's stardom. The cartoon followed Scott Howard, his werewolf alter ego, and his friends as they navigated teenage life. But unlike the movie's balance of comedy and awkwardness, the show leaned heavily into moral lessons and slapstick antics. Scott's secret identity was treated less like a metaphor for adolescence and more like a recurring gag. Fox did not return to voice Scott. Instead, the role was filled by voice actor Townsend Coleman. Without Fox's charisma, the series struggled to capture the spirit of the film. Critics noted the plots were formulaic and sanitized, with each episode ending in a tidy lesson about honesty, friendship, or self-confidence. Still, Teen Wolf resonated with some young viewers who saw themselves in Scott's awkward struggles, even in cartoon form. It lasted 2 seasons before fading away. Today, it's a forgotten chapter of the franchise, overshadowed by both the original film and the 2010's MTV reboot. Its legacy reminds us how even the quirkiest of movies could be stretched into a Saturday morning moral play. Rambo, The Force of Freedom, 1986. Perhaps the most jaw-dropping cartoon spin-off of the 1980s was Rambo, The Force of Freedom. Imagine this, an ultra-violent film series starring Sylvester Stallone, filled with war trauma, explosions, and bloodshed, reimagined as a children's cartoon about fighting generic evil. That's exactly what happened when Ruby Spears turned John Rambo into a kid-friendly action hero. In the animated version, Rambo led a team of operatives against the evil organization SAVAGE, Specialist Administrators of Vengeance, Anarchy, and Global Extortion. Instead of grappling with PTSD or the moral weight of war, this Rambo delivered motivational speeches, swung from helicopters, and used non-lethal gadgets. The show ran in syndication for 65 episodes, airing daily in 1986. Toy companies pushed action figures, lunchboxes, and coloring books, transforming the once bloody icon into a brand for children. Critics were stunned. How could a character born from the trauma of Vietnam be repackaged as a role model for kids? Parents were divided, some seeing it as harmless fun, others alarmed by the militarization of Saturday mornings. Today, Rambo. The Force of Freedom stands as the ultimate symbol of 1980s excess, the decade when anything, no matter how adult, could be turned into a cartoon. Its audacity is unmatched, making it the most unforgettable forgotten spin-off of them all. The 1980s were a decade of fearless experiments when Hollywood believed any hit could be reanimated for kids. Some spin-offs thrived, others collapsed, and many were lost to time. Which of these do you remember? Drop your favorite in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more hidden gems.